What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Gen Z Money Podcast, where we turn financial peace to your reality. I'm your host, James Bowman, and today we had an amazing guest by the name of Allie Datillio. Today, Allie talks about so many different things surrounding how she got into real estate, how she stumbles upon her deals, the connection she makes, and, all around just all of the different resources that she ends up using in order to become successful in real estate. Allie, she obviously demonstrates so many different creative, we call it creative financing, where you're not just saving up money to purchase a property. You might be borrowing money from a person, borrowing money from an institution, or just borrowing money or saving money or doing all these different things in order to get these deals done. And I don't want to give away too much of her story, guys, but it's honestly awesome, the relationship she builds and the value she actually brings to other people. So I really hope you guys are going to enjoy this episode. She is a woman in real estate, which women in real estate there are less women in real estate than men. So you're going to hear how that, plays out. But honestly, she has a phenomenal story. I really hope you guys enjoy it. And it's very, very repeatable. So with that being said, guys, I'm not going to give away too much of her story. Let's go ahead and just jump right into the interview. Hey, Allie, welcome to the Gen Z Money Podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. How are you?
I am doing phenomenal. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come in and talk about all of the success you've had, because honestly, I see you a lot in the way that we linked up was through the rookie, Bigger Pockets rookie group.
Yeah, the real estate rookie Facebook group.
Yep. Yeah, man. And you're in there, you're asking like some bomb questions, like questions that I realize. So I'll say a lot of times there are a lot of rookie questions that get answered 100 times, but your questions, every time you come in, I'm like, man, that's a good question. I don't think anybody's ever encountered that before. So it just shows me that you're in this thing, like doing it big. And
well, thanks. I'm embarrassed because I feel like, if you were to search my name in that group, you'll see all the because I think a lot of them are probably dumb questions, but in my moments of panic where I can't sleep, I gotta it's probably one of the most supportive groups I've found online. It's been great. So
yeah, it is. Like I say, it's great. I like going in there and helping people out. And even though I'm still a rookie too, but I guess we all have our different experience levels. But we are here today to talk about your money story and the way that you got into real estate and the way that you found so much success. So let's talk about, how was money talked about and viewed as you grew up?
Yeah, so I think we talked about money a good bit, but it came from a very conservative, almost fearful place. My family was very much kind of Dave Ramsey, fearful of debt. I was terrified of credit cards. I still am a little terrified of credit cards. It was just like plugged in my head from a very early age. Do not go into debt. It'll ruin your life. And so I never was taught maybe the power of money. It was more like the power of if things went wrong. So that's kind of how things started. And then just, grew from there.
So do you think, you mentioned Dave Ramsey, I talk about him so much on the podcast because even though I don't agree with everything he teaches and every single principle, I mean, I think he's taught me more than anyone else about money in general, not just real estate. So were you like a financial peace baby? Did your parents do that? Or is that something?
Yeah. They did the whole envelope thing. They still do. I'll get into it a little bit later, but my dad ended up losing his job when the recession hit. And I think that also really changed things for them. So they got super conservative. Growing up, my mom actually she was very successful in the corporate world. So my parents were divorced. So life with her was a little bit more free, and she spent a little more freely, and I loved it. That was a lot of fun. And then on my dad's side, that's when he lost his job. Things were a lot more conservative and a bit tighter. So I kind of got to see both of those worlds a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. That's something that I haven't gotten to speak to many people about, is having total opposite financial situations in the same family, where one side is more conservative, saving money, they don't have as much to burn, while the other side is, pretty non-frugal, I guess the word is.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to say my mom's very smart with her money, but yeah, but she just had a little bit more flexibility there. And I feel like I was a little bit spoiled there, just on that side. And then kind of it was not the total opposite. I was very comfortable with my dad's side of the family, but they spent their money differently. For my mom growing up, she really came from nothing. Both my parents, they worked their way up and built great lives themselves. So I think a lot of for my mom was just wanting to give everything that she didn't have. So, it was really important that I got the car I wanted and all those things and the clothes I wanted, just I think because she came from, in her childhood, she was a big family of 7 kids. She worked her way through school, through college, and had to provide everything for herself. And I think once she realized she was in a position she could provide for me, like she wanted to do that. So
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask a question that kind of skips a little bit further in your story, but I'm just curious to know, do you see in yourself more of the financial characteristics of your father, your mother, or just a big mishmash of both?
Yeah, I think both influenced me in different ways. I think, going ahead to like, I think there was a question about a moment where things changed for me. It was when my dad lost his job so he worked in construction, recession hit 2008. He actually ended up losing his job, I think 2009, 2010. But up to that point, I was living very comfortably on both sides and I never had to worry about money. And when that happened, he had worked for this company my entire life, over 20 years at that point. And it never even occurred to me that losing his job was even an option. Also at that point, like my stepmom had just started her own business and they had just built a new house. There was a lot of things happening. And I just like that moment, I still envision I was coming home visiting from college on like winter break. And he had to tell me, so I'm going to why am I getting tearful? But I think seeing my dad vulnerable for the first time, he's my hero, right? He's always been that, my protector, and to see him in a position of vulnerability that he couldn't control, that shook me to my core, like really, really shook me. From there, then I ended up changing my college. I moved off campus, kind of graduated early too, to relieve some of that pressure, to help with that. My parents, I was very privileged at least to have them provide for my college. I didn't have student loans, which was awesome, but they split that 50-50. And even though my mom probably could have afforded to pay for all that, I guess that was the agreement. So I just wanted to help my dad out in that portion that I could. But with that, changing everything for me, I do think I'm definitely a little bit more conservative. I like knowing I've got my savings there and those worst. I'm always, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. I have a lot of anxiety, so I tend to just expect the worst at all times now. So I like having that cushion and that savings. With my mom, I also like the finer things. And I have the tendency of wanting nice things, but the anxiety of spending too much money spoils any of that kind of for me. I'd rather be more conservative and save as much as I can.
Gotcha. And I just kind of I want to go back a little bit to what you said. I do notice that a lot of people have that sick and tired of being sick and tired moment where they decide to change. And it takes a certain level of maturity to, instead of having your own moment of reflection, you can look at other situation and say, wow, I never want to be there. And that's not to talk bad on your dad at all. I'm sure he's done a wonderful job. You said he held the same job for 20 plus years. It takes a hard worker to do that. But being able to look at someone else's situation and say, okay, this is a bad situation and I don't want to be there, so I'm going to make the changes. I think that shows a certain level of maturity to where you don't have to get to your worst. Instead, you can just see others in their struggles and benefit off of that. So I definitely want to commend you for that, because I think that's the agenda I want to push, especially with this podcast, is to look at other people's struggles and see how you can improve and never get there. But I understand that until you get there, you're never gonna really feel it. So
Well, from that experience too, I've always been an entrepreneur. I had a pet sitting business when I was 10 and branded my own shirts and did all of that. That's always been in me. But I think in that moment too, recognizing when you're working for someone else, you don't have that control. And at any moment, essentially you could lose everything. And I feel there's risk owning your own business. But at least there's more control there. You can see those things coming and anticipate and react accordingly. So that was, I think, also just really pivotal for me, influenced me to want to have my own thing and be in control of that future. So
Yeah, absolutely. And then real quick, what was your degree in from college?
yeah, so my day job, I majored in art, minored in math. I feel like a little unique in that I'm creative. I'm a painter, and then I also though love numbers, and I love the black and white in my spreadsheets of seeing all those numbers and compared to kind of the abstractness of art. So for my day job, I am a full-time artist. I'm a painter. I worked in accounting for a few years part-time while I was painting part-time before I went all in my art. I also have a online coaching business for artists, teaching them how to use like social media and online marketing. That's a little bit more passive now. We have a team of 5 and I have a business partner there. So I'm only in that business maybe 6 to 8 hours a week, but I think we have 250 members now worldwide that pay for our access to our courses and our coaching. So I have those 2 businesses. And then on top of that now our real estate. So
Okay, so
a lot.
you're a busy woman. You're a busy woman.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned real estate. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
How did you discover real estate? How did you realize like this is what I want to really do?
Yeah, I've always been into real estate. And I feel like just it's a little cliche, but like everyone's into HGTV and loving the design. My grandmother, she was kind of my babysitter growing up, and she was a realtor. So I would spend I remember being like 9 years old on her computer, just searching the MLS on her, like having that access and printing out the like information sheets and just really loving that. And I have an aunt that's also a realtor. So it's been around for a while. I didn't know exactly. I always thought maybe like flipping or design would be my way in. It wasn't until then I got into like bigger pockets and soaking up all the free information that I could to recognize more of it as like an investment wealth building situation, less of a career, but more of like just a long-term planning option. So
Okay, so after you discovered real estate, what was your plan going into it? Like, what was your strategy?
yeah, so going into it, we didn't really have much. I think we kind of stumbled into it not maybe unintentionally, but not exactly knowing what we were doing at the time. So our very first home, I would say, is kind of where we started. We bought our first home in 2014. So it's good timing considering everything. We bought it on a state auction. It needed some work, but it was livable. We actually did a 203K FHA 203K rehab loan with that. We were able to replace all the windows, kind of doing the bare minimum we needed to do to get in. And then we lived there for about 5 years and just chipped away, paying cash to renovate everything else: new roof, new kitchen, new HVAC, all of the things. And then we ended up selling it in 2020. At the beginning of COVID, things were crazy. I've got all my careers or all my businesses. I also have 2-year-old twins and a 4-year-old. So when we found out we were having the twins, we quickly realized like we needed more space. So that's when we decided to sell. And with COVID happening, I could have never, I don't know that anyone could have really anticipated how things would have played out the next 2 years, but we were fearful and afraid, like if we don't sell now, we were selling to friends, they're willing to pay full asking price, which I thought was the greatest deal. Now knowing like if we had held on to it 6 months, we could have gotten, a lot more, but even still, we were able to net $100,000 from that sale. We were able to put some of that down towards our next home, our bigger home, and then roll that. We also pulled a Heloc out on the house we bought kind of right away to get that cash right back out. And then we did our first BRRRR. So that was really our first like intentional real estate project, was a BRRRR.
Okay, Allie. So you just threw a whole bunch of
Okay.
terms that I want to go back through. I wrote them down just to
Yeah.
hit on them because a lot of people are so new and they don't understand.
Okay.
So the first thing you mentioned was a FHA 203K loan. Can you just very quickly go over what that is?
Yeah, so it's a really great product that at the time, especially, now 8 years ago, I had to do a lot of digging. There wasn't that much information out there, but it is a loan program through the FHA. So similar to the FHA programs for first-time home buyers, we only needed to put, I think, 3.5% down, but they would also then fund the rehab costs. So that's where there was a little bit more paperwork. We also had to do a little bit more digging to find a lender that was familiar with them because a lot of the local ones at the time were not. So we had to kind of go down the road to find someone that was willing to work with us. We also had to find a licensed contractor to do the rehab. You couldn't do it yourself. It was a little bit more managed, where they had to manage the funds and see that it was being done by a professional, which is why we did kind of the bare minimum, knowing we'd be able to save money later down the road. But that was our way to buy a house that needed some work with, the lowest amount of down payment that we could afford at the time.
Gotcha. And so what you described with your first house was a live and flip, where essentially you bought it, you lived in it while it was rehabbed, and then you ended up selling it down the road, which I assume all of that $100,000 gain was tax-free because you lived there.
Right.
So yeah, we're gonna go over it in plenty of episodes, guys, where if you live in a house for the last 5 years and you sell, then you get tax benefits, essentially tax-free. But you also mentioned a Heloc. I want to go over really quickly, guys. And a Heloc is just simply, it's just a line of credit that the collateral is your home. So imagine like a big old credit card, but if you don't pay it, then they can foreclose and take your home. That's all it is. It's super simple.
Yeah, the Heloc, it's a great tool as well, because it's typically low interest, and often it's interest only payments for the first few years. So your monthly payment is low comparative to like a mortgage. And also you only owe what you've taken out. So if we had a $50,000 line of credit, it's like a big credit card where your limit's 50 grand. But if you're not spending that 50 grand, you don't owe anything. It's just there available kind of as a backup, or in our case, it's good for kind of a quick turnaround where we knew we were going to be basically flipping. We weren't selling, but we were going to refinance pretty quickly. So we knew for this short amount of time, it was a good solution. It was also a program they were running that I think it was like the first 6 months, it was like 0.9% interest, like almost nothing. And it was a fixed rate, which was a rare thing as well. So yeah, but a good
tool. It was
tool.
fixed rate for the whole term of the Heloc. I think they're open for like 10 or 20 years or so.
It's 10 years. Yeah.
10 years.
Which now I believe most of them are, I feel like most of the time they're variable, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the first time I've ever heard of a fixed interest rate Heloc. So that's pretty, especially at a point, you said a 0.9%?
Well, 0.9 at first, then it went up to like 3.9% or something. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you mentioned a BRRRR, which super quickly, guys, it's just when you buy a property, you fix it up, you rent it out, and then you refinance. I'm not going to get too deep into it, guys, because we're going to talk about it plenty on many different episodes, but it's a great way to continuously reuse your money as long as the market stays good as it is. It's got its risks, but we're not going to go too far down into that. But so you talked about your first home, your live and flip, where you made that $100,000 and you kind of realized like, okay, real estate's not too bad. We did a pretty good job. Yeah. So would you say do you think that was intentional, or do you think that was just complete luck?
I think there's a lot of luck involved. I think the timing was right. I think, we bought in a neighborhood we knew there's value to appreciate. But I don't think I would have ever anticipated the market to go as crazy as it did. So that I think is unintentional. If we want to talk about my first real deal, the BRRRR, I think, is the first deal where we went into it really with a plan and executing and knowing what we were going to do. And it also worked out pretty well.
Let's get into it. So
okay.
Let's get into your first deal. Let's hear about it.
Yep. So our first deal, it was a tiny little house, about 690 square feet, 2 bedrooms, cute little cottage. It felt very, for our first project, it felt manageable for us. It wasn't too scary. We bought it. It was on the MLS, but we bought it with cash for $65,000. And that cash came from the selling of our first house. It was part cash, part from the Heloc. And then we ended up putting $35,000 of money into the rehab. We did a good portion ourselves, but also had a couple like drywall guys, electrician, plumbers. We did a lot more like finishing, painting, cleaning kind of things. And that was pretty much a full rehab, new roof, new floors, new HVAC, new kitchen, new bathroom. Yeah, pretty much all renewed, redone. Turned out really cute. So 65 to purchase, it was 35 to rehab. And then, the final step of that BRRRR is to refinance. So it appraised for 170,000. We pulled out then 120 cash out refi. So that meant we got the 100 back plus 20,000 that we kind of made that money. And that's also, I guess you could say that's tax-free money because we owe on, it's debt, but we got 120 back. It's now being rented for $1,100 a month. We have a really great tenant in there. Again, I feel like we lucked out a little bit because I would have never when I was running my numbers, I kept thinking it was gonna be really tight. I thought it would appraise for like, we'd be lucky if it appraised for 130, 140. That was the numbers I was running. And I was gonna be happy if, we almost broke even or maybe left a couple grand back in the deal. Did not anticipate it to appraise for as high as it did. But that felt like
Okay.
our first really big win. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that is a big win because not only did you get all of your money back, but you got more.
Yeah.
So it's like the return on that is infinite because you literally, yeah, you flipped it without selling it. So I mean, that's a win. There's a couple of things. First of all, what was this in 2020?
Yeah, we bought it October 2020. We ended up refinancing and renting it out in May 2021.
So okay, guys, peak of COVID. Maybe
Yeah.
not peak, but right smack dab in the middle. So
Yeah.
those of you guys who might think coronavirus is holding you back, no, people are still out here doing deals. Second thing, where? What area of the country? Because
Yes.
$65,000 for a house. I mean, some people are like, "Phew, that's in a bad
Yeah.
neighborhood, you know."
Yeah, so we live in Hagerstown, Maryland. We're about 90 minutes outside of DC, kind of out further west of DC. So it's a great kind of, there's some commuters. It's a great area. And actually since COVID, it's even become more popular because people are kind of leaving the city and branching out for more space. This home was actually in Pennsylvania. So we live kind of right at the state line between Maryland and Pennsylvania. So that property was in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, which is a smaller town, but actually booming right now for rent prices, everything. I think again, because people are kind of wanting to be a little bit more out into the country. Yeah, so it's I would say a suburb, small suburb of DC. Waynesboro, you could say is maybe a suburb of like York, PA, Harrisburg, maybe, but all around that area.
Yeah, and I will say, me and my wife just took a trip to DC, and I have no doubt in my mind people are trying to move out of there. I didn't like it
Where are
personally.
you? Where are you?
I'm in Savannah, but we
Oh,
took a
okay.
trip up to DC
Yeah.
for skiing to visit family and stuff like that. And it was okay, but I wouldn't want to live there. Especially it was really, really snowy. So
Yeah, well, but it is cold up here. Yeah, I mean, I think DC is a great city. I think it's also a great city when you're young and you want that kind of city life. I think though a lot of times when people get families and want bigger homes or yards or more space, it's natural to kind of move out. And now that, especially I think just with more people moving or working remotely and having more flexibility of where they're living, if they don't have to be crammed in a tiny apartment or row home, if they can have more space, why not?
absolutely. And then the last thing you mentioned, which is crazy to me, you found it on the MLS.
Yeah.
Allie, there are no deals on the MLS, so you're lying.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, we can get into, I've done actually half of our deals so far on the MLS. This one, looking for just kind of potential that maybe not everyone will see. It was a tiny house. The whole kitchen, like ceiling was super low sloped. You like hit your head when you wash the dishes. So I think there were a lot of turnoffs. It was off this kind of like awkward alleyway. We spun that as like, it's this really private location. It was just kind of this awkward house. I think a lot of people just didn't see the potential. Also, of course, it helped that we were able to offer cash and make it a quick deal, an appealing price point. Our realtor, I think it was on the market for 70 maybe, and we offered 65. And I think our realtor thought we were crazy. Like, no, you need to ask, offer full price. And we didn't, and somehow, it worked out. So, but I think because, we came into cash, that was definitely a little bit more competitive. So,
And well, I guess I kind of know the answer to this, but I'm gonna ask you anyways. I assume you weren't working with an agent who's also an investor.
Well, sort of. So I mentioned my aunt is a realtor. She's a realtor that's working with us right now. Her boyfriend actually, they've been together for like a dozen years. So it's her life partner basically. But he owns his own HVAC company, which is a great resource to have. But he also flips a few houses a year and has a rental portfolio. So he kind of usually tags along so we can kind of get his feedback, especially the first few now I feel a lot more confident to make that call on my own, but it was really great having him there as well, just to kind of nod. And the biggest thing for us was when he said, if you don't make an offer on this house, like I'm going to, and that's when we knew like, okay,
that's where you were like, well, there goes
yeah.
my answer. And the only reason I made that assumption is because I think a lot of times when agents say things like, oh, you have to offer full price or they're not going to take you serious. Normally they're not an investor themselves because they would know that sometimes, especially with cash offers and motivated sellers, like they will accept less than asking. So that's the only reason I assume that. But and I just want to point out, look, you're using your resources, okay? Like he's in your life. You might as well get something out of him and then, give him something back in return. But yeah, I absolutely use his experience, especially if he's willing to mentor you and guide you and give you those helpful tips.
Yeah, I think just starting out, having that confidence, having someone else give you that confidence is really well needed. Also for that first deal, just we went into it. And I think this is something they say on Bigger Pockets often, but just knowing you're going to make mistakes and that your first deal is a learning experience. So I literally, every time something went wrong, I was like, well, I learned not to do it that way this next time. I think moving afterwards, it's been actually harder because now I feel more pressure to not make those mistakes. Like I'm a pro now, right? I've got to do it all right. But at least for that first one, just having that in the back of your mind that things are going to go wrong. It's a lesson learned. Nothing's going to be perfect.
And then you fail forward. So you might fail, but now and you move forward. And I think that's a big step in getting out of paralysis analysis is knowing you are going to fail. You are going to fail with something. We all have. But now I will say you can control how hard you fail because you can fail and lose it all. So, but at the same time, you can't let that hold you back. And then I assume you self-manage because you haven't mentioned a property manager.
Yeah, currently we're self-managing. My husband's definitely part of this, but he works W-2. That's pretty demanding. So I'm mostly hands-on and doing most everything. So I am self-managing. For that project, we found a really great tenant and she's been no issues. For other properties we've bought since then, we have all inherited tenants, which have a lot of inherited issues. So the property management part, I'm realizing I don't want to do it forever. When I'm running my numbers and analyzing deals, I'm always budgeting in as if we were to hire out property management, and that may come at some point. But I also know, it's all about having the right tenants in there. And I just don't know yet that I trust a property management company yet to make that decision. I'm potentially maybe if we could get, if we get the tenants in and then once things are stabilized, then hand it over to property management. But at the same time, that's kind of like the easy part. We just had one property that we were rehabbing and renting out. It was a single family home. And I spent probably over 100 hours with just going through applicants and showing it. And it was a nightmare. And we put our requirements, what we want to see, pretty minimum requirements, but still so many unqualified applicants or people that would just lie. I'd do my background check and everything, and just it was really frustrating. So at that moment, I called a couple property managers just to be like, I'm done. Can I just pass this on? Thankfully, like the next day we found someone great and I didn't have to go that route. But it is definitely a possibility later down, especially as we scale and grow. I at least don't want to be doing that. I think my husband's probably better at it. We're going to get probably later in the conversation talking about long-term goals. One would be to get him out of his job and to be able to do whatever he wants, really. We don't know exactly what that is, but I could see potentially him having his own property management company that he would run. I would totally trust him to do it. I just don't personally want to be the one in the weeds. So
yeah, and it's super important. I'm so glad that you brought that up. Is like, even though you are managing on your own, you're still putting it in your numbers. Like, as long as you have the room, and at the end of the day, okay, if you self-manage, you can pay yourself that, or you can roll it into the next deal. But the fact that you're accounting for that, at least, a certain portion of it, I think it's key. Like, I don't have a problem with people self-managing as long as they do it right and they follow all their laws and stuff like that. But I don't like that being the deal breaker. It's like, if I hire a property manager, now this property breaks even. It's too close for comfort there, because
if that's
at some
the
point, at some point you're going to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I've never self-managed myself just because I don't have the patience and I don't have the time. So, and I know my property managers are just, they're amazing. So, but okay, let's go ahead and get into your best deal, the big boy.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm torn. I'm torn on this one. Which way to go? Oh crap. Let me turn on my do not disturb. So there's two deals I was going back and forth on which to talk about. Both, I think, have the potential to be like the best deal ever, but we're still kind of works in process, mainly with those inherited tenants, getting rents up and all of that. So, which one should I talk about? I'm going to talk about one.
You could talk about both of them.
Both.
Yeah.
Well, I'll talk about one. It's interesting how we acquired it. And this was just a technique I wanted to share because I'm like, I mean, it's nothing like revolutionary, but my go-to lately that I found success as far as finding off-market deals is reaching out when properties are for rent, reaching out to the landlord to see if they're going to sell. I do a lot of this on Facebook Marketplace where I can message them. I've also done it through Zillow where like if there's a phone number, I'll pick up and call. I look for properties that are typically under market rent with kind of like terrible photos, listed from a private landlord, not a property management company. And then I just say like, hey, my husband and I are looking to, purchase rental property. We'd love, are you interested in selling even this property, maybe others you own? We'd love to take any headaches off your hands. And from that, we've actually purchased 2 properties. And it just became a great networking opportunity to network with these, and typically they're older landlords. The one I'll talk about, he is looking to retire. And I think part of it is he sees this like young couple, they see themselves in us a little bit, but 30 years pass and want to pass on all of their knowledge and we're eager to soak it up. And, he was like, well, yeah, actually, I'm showing this unit this weekend if you want to come meet. And this was February 2021. We met, chatted, turned out that he had this property and about 16 other units between 4 other properties. And, he's like, I wasn't really thinking about selling, but now that you mention it, I am, thinking about retiring. I've got to do things on my own time, but I'm open to it. So we just kept in touch from February. We ended up closing on that property September of last year. And now he is basically selling all of his portfolio off to us piece by piece, just from kind of building this relationship. And yeah, we're really excited about the partnership. So this particular property is a triplex. It's great condition. That's the other thing. He's taken such good care of it. It's an I'll say it's, I think built in 1870, which we're close to the Antietam battlefield. If you're familiar with like the Civil War, which is a big draw actually for like tourism, but there's a lot of older homes built around that time. So it's not unusual, but he did all new central air heat pump like 10 years ago, all new windows. It's completely updated, turnkey. But the potential there was because rents were so low, he hadn't raised rents in a long time. So, when he was calculating what it was worth, it was still a good deal, but knowing what potentially we could be getting rent for, and especially it's a very high demand area, that's where I really saw the value. So it was a triplex, each unit, they're side by side though. 2 stories, each unit's 2 bedrooms. We purchased it for $255. It appraised right off the bat at $300. Had a really terrible appraisal at first though, which was a great experience. They appraised it. They used comps from like 10 miles away in a different city, which was a completely different market. And we did have our lender, I guess, I don't know, what do you call it? Refute it or challenge it. Yeah. And they just came back the next day. I actually think the address was a really generic, it's like a generic address. And I think they just plugged it in wrong and put it in the wrong city. I don't know exactly what happened, but the next day they came back. We had provided them comps, like we think you should use these comps. They used those exact comps and it came back 70,000 higher the next day. So we had kind of $50,000 of equity right off the bat.
Okay, so the first appraisal was not the 300,000. The first
appraisal was at 230, and we're like, what? We're buying it for 255. We know it's a good deal. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But they were using it from a town where actually we live, but further out, so further away from DC, and where rents are even less. It's just it was a completely different city and we knew like there was an exact comp, like built same year, almost the same exact square footage, had just sold like 6 weeks before for like 325. And we're like, why wouldn't you use this comp? Like, this makes no sense. So when we provided the comps, and I think especially for multifamily properties right now, I think we had a hard time finding appraisers to want to do them. I just think they're so swamped. So they're rushing it. I think that's part of the reason. I don't want to make too many assumptions, but I think when we gave them comps, they were just like, all right, this is easy. Like, I'm not going to like, if you're providing, like, I'll just go with that. And I just think they took kind of the path of least resistance. So it worked in our favor. We used private money with that. We built also some great relationships with lenders through this experience. So we had pretty good terms. And our plan then is to refinance out probably next year once we can get rents. So we're renting them each for about $800. There's potential to rent them for $1,200 to $1,300 a month. Part of that, like, it's a whole thing though about, I don't want to like kick these people out. So we're trying to work with them to see how we can make it reasonable without, jumping that quickly. But I do think once we have those rent values up to where they should be, the value of the property then will also increase. There's potential for this town. It's a really great location right off the square to maybe Airbnb one of the units. So that's a possibility. So I was just really excited. The numbers aren't like home run numbers, but I was excited for how we acquired it, then what it led to, and that we're in a pretty good position as far as cash flow and equity and everything. So
I mean, in the relationship that you built, now you've got deals in your funnel, going forward. I do want to hit on a couple things you said. So really quick, just guys, she mentioned an off-market deal. All that means is they haven't gone to an agent and listed it on the MLS. It means they own the property. Either they had no intention of selling or they just had not listed it with an agent. That's what off-market means. I had a question, or I'll go back to the question. You challenged the appraisal. So we all have to understand appraisers are also humans, and humans make mistakes. And sometimes they can be lazy. Sometimes they can be awesome. You have to deal with what you get. So the fact that you already knew your comps, you had them in your email ready, like that shows that you did your due diligence beforehand. That way, when it's time to actually come up and provide the data, because anyone can go up to appraisal and say, no, my triplex is worth 300,000, and they're gonna be like, okay, that's worth it to you, but it's different to go up and say, look, this is what the market shows that this triplex should be worth. And that's all appraisals, that's all they deal with is actual data and facts, and not how you feel. Because I can feel like my house is worth $1 million. That's not what somebody's going to pay for it. So I do think that's awesome. I did have a question, because you said that you started the conversation with this person in February, but you didn't close until 6 months later.
Yeah, it was a long process, and I didn't want to push him, so for him, he wanted to, I think he wanted to get with like his CPA and figure out kind of like the tax implications of selling. And we were running right into kind of tax season. So he's like, I'm going to wait till after tax season because I don't want to like bombard them. So then we got to that point, and then I was like, well, I need to talk to my financial advisor also to see. And I was like, okay, like take your time, do whatever you need to do. And then it was finally probably June that we kind of really got the ball rolling and move things forward. But I just was whatever you want, we're here, we're in no rush. I didn't want to push him. So we let him take the time. I wanted him to feel good about what, the decision he was making. He was, he self-manages all of these properties. He had a great career, but he was being a landlord full time, I think maybe for the past 10 years. So this was everything for him. And I know it was a big decision to give it up. He's the sweetest, I just met him last week. He texted me, he's like, hey, have you turned off the water? I know it's getting cold. Like I can run up there and do that for you. Or like, he's offered to mow. And I'm like, no, like that's my job now. But he did meet me to show me like where the water turn off was. It was also just a great chance, like chat. And because we're now and like moving forward with the next properties. Again, I'm not rushing, but just making sure we're still on track for all of that. But yeah, a great opportunity. So yeah,
and I think that's a big part of it, because a lot of times people don't want to be bought. Like, look, I want to buy it. I'll close in 7 days, and that's not what everyone wants. And so when someone can come off with that, pushy persistence, it can really turn people off. So you guys being not only patient, but and I guess it also has the fact that he wasn't pushing you guys around saying, oh, I got to talk to my wife. I got to talk to my kids. I got to talk. No, these were legitimate people. I need to worry about the taxes. I need to worry about my overall financial status. I need to speak with professionals. Yeah. I think I can assume that kind of helped in that patience, because he's doing it the right way. Like he wasn't just.
Yeah, I trust him. I knew when he was saying like, you've got my word, these are yours. Like when I'm ready for it, it's yours. So that's where I had at least the peace of mind to know like he wasn't gonna cut us out, like, and do anything under the table. Like, he's a great guy. It was just, we had to do things on his timeline, which was totally fine by me. So.
Absolutely. And then you mentioned private money. Can you quickly just go over what private money is?
Yeah, so, if you're using kind of conventional mortgage, that'd be from a bank, or we've also done some commercial loans with private money. It's usually using friends or family money. So it's not a hard money lender. So for this, we went to my husband's parents who are now investing with us. So it's a loan, they're loaning us, but it was an opportunity for them to make a little bit of money. They had some cash that they weren't really doing anything with. So we're paying them. It's a very reasonable interest rate. I think we're at 3.5%. So great, but more than they were making with it just sitting in the bank. And we have a plan to pay them back within 3 years, but we're hoping to do that even quicker. So.
And then how did you guys structure that? Was it like a promissory note, or do they have a lien on the property, or?
Yeah, so they have essentially like the second mortgage. But I think there is, I don't know, we went back and forth as far as if it's a mortgage or like a note. I don't know exactly where we landed, but essentially it's a second mortgage on the property.
So then who has the first mortgage?
The lender. No, so we used their money for the down payments, and then we used a commercial loan for that majority of the payment. We used a DSCR, debt service credit ratio loan. We don't have to get too much in the weeds. But
no, we won't get to it.
It's a great product. It's basically, though, a commercial loan that's looking at the health of the deal and the cash flow, not necessarily at our personal debt to income ratio. So, and it was a lender that they lived 2 doors down from my husband's parents. So again, using these resources we have, he was familiar with them. He felt comfortable having them in that second loan position. Not a lot of lenders will agree to that. So we have zero money in the deal currently. And our plan then is to refinance next year, pay back the parents, and then potentially put it into a conventional mortgage if we can.
Okay. And so a couple things that you brought up. A lot of people, they don't know that you can use commercial loans for residential properties. What she's describing, a triplex, it is considered residential. Anything up to 4 units, anything up to a quadplex is classified as residential, but you can get a commercial loan on residential properties, even single family homes.
If there's rent. Yeah, right. If you have that rental income coming in, it's considered a commercial.
Yeah. I mean, you can't do it for your primary home, but for investment properties you can. Because I know a lot of people, for some reason, a lot of people skip over that. They'll go conventional lending, they understand private money and they understand hard money, but they never really look at commercial. And if you're cash flowing and the deal is good enough, they don't even care where the down payment comes from for the most part. They just care that the money is there.
Yeah, it's, I think, a resource a lot of people don't use enough of. There's risk involved, though, because they aren't 30-year fixed. We have really great, so a couple of our properties now are using a DSCR loan. This one is, it's a variable, but it's at 3.5%, knowing though we want to refinance out really quickly. The other property, which we could also talk about, but that one we use, it is amortized over 25 years, but 10-year fixed, which gave us a lot of confidence there. So,
so 10-year fixed and then a balloon payment, or 10-year fixed and then
you'll either refinance
or your variable will kick in,
or will be
okay.
And we'll probably refinance pretty sooner than that. So, but just knowing interest rates are rising, all those unknowns, there is risk involved. Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, you can't predict the future. Interest rates could be, when you go to refinance, interest rates could be lower. You don't know. I don't know. No one knows except, politicians, if they do. So, I mean, that's awesome. That's really good. You kind of, you found like a good mix between private money, commercial, and I like it. I mean, I haven't done any commercial yet because I'm still just using up all my conventional loans, but that's my next step. My next step is commercial because I just think it's one of the easier routes than hard money or private, but that's just my personal opinion on it.
Yeah, so far it's been super easy. I think the downside is there's a little bit more risk involved, but as far as the ease factor, yeah, I think if you can present a good deal where the numbers work, banks are eager to work with you. So,
and I guess the main risk you're just talking about is the variable interest rate.
Yeah.
let's look at the big picture. Is that risk that high compared to other things? I mean, I think you're still pretty risk adverse, you
Well,
know?
as I say, again, just remembering how conservative I am, it's a
Hmm.
big risk to me, but I have the confidence in my numbers, and I know I'm analyzing my numbers very conservatively, very much worst case scenario. And if worst case scenario they work out okay, then I feel pretty good moving forward. So
I just say that because there are people in the real estate game that get started with like credit cards.
yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah, it's like that level of risk. And
Yeah,
what you're talking about,
yeah.
I think you're in a really good spot. I think you're taking advantage of a lot of different things in your life, which God bless, because it's hard to get started. But it's like once you get started, it seems like they just keep coming
Yeah,
and they
yeah,
keep
for
running
sure.
into you. So did you want to talk about the other deal, or do you just want to go ahead and go
Well,
into your goal?
I can just talk briefly. It's also an unusual property. This one was on the MLS.
Mhm.
It's actually like a quadplex, but it was a single family home. And then there's also an apartment building with 3 units and 3 garages. Again, we found it on the MLS because it was so unusual. All the pictures just showed the house. And it was expensive for a single family house, but then you had to dig a little bit to be like, oh, what are these apartments? Oh, what are these garages that are also rented out, to really figure out like there was a lot of money to be made. It can cash flow really well. Again, we've inherited tenants where rents have not been raised in literally 10 years. So we're navigating that. We actually are meeting with them tomorrow to go to have that conversation. My husband's handling that because I didn't want to. But again, that was the next property we bought after that first burr. So that's where we took that cash. When we refinanced, we took that cash out and then put it all back into this property.
Mhm.
Again, using that DSCR loan. And I think we will refinance within a few years, as soon as we can, as soon as we get the rents up again. This was the same property that the single family house we rehabbed and just got it rented out. The apartments though are what we have the tenants in there that have been long-term. The single family house was also our first eviction process. So that was a learning experience. But again, just kind of seeing potential. There's also a mobile home on the property on a separate lot. The mobile home is gutted. We're going to probably tear that down, but that lot's potentially buildable. So there's just a lot of options. And I think a lot of people overlooked that because it wasn't listed very well. And I think a lot of people just like didn't know what to do with it. So, and
So
actually with that mobile home, I think they counted it as 5 units. So you couldn't use a conventional loan, which I think a lot of people then got scared off, not looking at other.
that's exactly what I was about to ask you, because you called it a quadplex, but that sounds,
Yeah.
I guess
I mean, I
kind of.
get, yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I'm not
So
sure how that would work. That's a tough one.
yeah, and so it appraised again, it conveniently appraised for like exactly the purchase amount, because I just think they weren't willing to like we were fine with. I just
You're not
don't
gonna
think
find comps for
I
that.
know, but that's the thing. So I think there is again risk, will we be able to refinance that into conventional? It'll be a stretch. Yeah, like I don't know what that's going to look like. But
You
yeah,
started talking to a conventional lender to even see if it's a possibility, or
yeah, I think we did. And I think again, it was finding an appraisal that was going to be the issue. And so I guess that's probably why we just ended up going commercial and not really like
yeah,
going back.
not messing with it. I got you. That's an interesting one. I definitely remember listening to a podcast where there was something similar. I think it was a Bigger Pockets podcast where he bought a commercial property, but there was like mobile homes, and then there was a house, and then there was
Oh yeah.
a farm, or it was just something
Yeah.
crazy. It's interesting because these are things that are literally out there, and there's such missed opportunities. Like not everyone can look at that. Like I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't look at that and be like, I can do something with that. So it takes a certain level of confidence to be able to, you know what, when others are fearful, I'm gonna be greedy and I'm gonna
Yeah.
snatch it up and I'm gonna.
Well, and again, it was a good location too. So I knew like appreciation value. I knew there'd be high demand for rents. Again, in all these kind of like small multifamily properties, that's where I don't have a ton of confidence in the appraisals. Just like how are they going to comp it out like a single family home based on square footage? Is it going to be more on cap rate. Like it's this weird in between that I get a little nervous about. So it'll be interesting. We have all these plans to refinance over the next few years. We'll see what happens, how that works out. So, yeah.
That is amazing. That's amazing. That's great. I hope I find something like that, because you make me want to just go look for stuff like that, because it's just such hidden opportunity. But okay, so let's go ahead and go into some of your short-term goals, because everybody knows, like, in order to be successful, you have to have a goal to shoot for. So what are some goals that you hope to accomplish within the next 6 months to a year?
So our big annual plan, we want to do 2 flips, which we actually really haven't done yet. We had that live-in flip, but haven't done a quick turnaround flip. But that is a goal, just to build back our capital. There's still some private money we could use, but I just would, again, feel more confident knowing we have a little bit more cushion for the emergency funds. And then we're kind of aggressively scaling. We're hoping to get 15 more doors for our rental portfolio within this next year, which I think is attainable. It's going to be pushing us, but that's where we want to be. We started the year, if you would have asked me this 6 months ago, I really thought Airbnb was going to be the route I wanted to go. I just feel like everyone's talking about short-term rentals and for cash flow and all the potential. But like having that terrible experience trying to rent out and realizing like I just don't enjoy the property management side, and knowing the short-term rentals, that's going to be my responsibility and just even more hands-on. I'm putting a pause on that. I would love to design an Airbnb, and that's what I'm most attracted to the idea of, just because I feel like with all these rentals I'm rehabbing, I'm kind of holding back and I can't do anything really fun. I would love to do an Airbnb for that, but realistically, if I'm the one managing it, I don't want to do it. So instead, with flips, I can still design. I like managing crews. I can deal with that. It's the tenants or the customers, that kind of relations I don't enjoy so much. So 2 flips, 15 more doors.
I think it's great that you are able to kind of pick out your weaknesses and your strengths and play on those. Because a lot of times people will try and strengthen their weaknesses, but instead of focusing on just using the strengths you already have. Now, sometimes I guess it's worth it if your weakness is really big, but I mean, a weakness of not wanting to have to deal with tenants, that can always be sourced out, and you have a husband who obviously is better at it than you, so you can always count on him. So
Well, for me, I don't even consider it, I guess, necessarily a weakness. Like I think I'm okay at it, but I just know I don't enjoy it. And when I am dreading something, it just drains so much energy. And it's that opportunity cost of like, I'm spending way too much time doing something I'm hating. Like, what am I missing out on because it's taking up? So that's where I'm considering, like, what do I want to do more of? What like fills me up, as opposed to what I want to do less of, what feels heavy and just not worth it. So
yeah, that's well said. Well said. So then, okay, so we went over your short-term goals. What are some of your long-term goals that you want to accomplish within the next 5 to 10 years? And then what does the finish line look like? Like, when do you know you made it? Or have you made it?
No, we have not yet. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. I think long-term goals would be getting my husband out of his W-2, just to give him the flexibility to do what he wants. And I think he's still kind of figuring that out. But again, like I just feel very blessed to be, I mean, I'm busy, but I'm running these different businesses, but it's exactly what I want to be doing. I'm excited every day. I get to decide what I'm doing every day, and knowing where he's stuck driving to that office every day, like from 9 to 5, he's there no matter what. I would love to be able to give him that flexibility. And I'm only in the position where I am today because he gave me that time, that flexibility, being able to build my businesses to where they are today. So I want to be able to give that back to him. So I would say within 5 years, hopefully we have enough cash flow from our rental properties to make that happen. I think between rental properties and flips, if the market's still working. So that is probably long-term finish line goals. Just both of us having the flexibility and freedom to spend our days doing what we want. We did this whole like goal exercise looking at what our future is, and it's like we want to be able to have lunch every day together. We want to be able to work out when we want to work out. We want to be able to take vacations with our kids when we can, whenever we want to. So having just that flexibility and those options.
Okay, so then I guess it's kind of hard to project that, but how long do you think it'll take you to get to where you want to go?
I think to actually just get cash flow, I think we could do that within 2 to 3 years. Actually, I think that could happen pretty quickly. I think though, to feel a little bit more stable, I would give it maybe 5 years. I mean, I think it could happen within 2 to 3 years. Let's say that. And I think it probably will happen that quickly, knowing us. Like if we set a goal, like it's going to happen, as long as like the market doesn't, I don't know, as long as everything's not.
As long as we don't all blow up,
Yeah.
But I mean, the way you take advantage of all the different situations and stuff like that, like I think you'll be able to pivot. I think I can tell because you've already been able to pivot up to this point by seeing all these missed opportunities and using the resources around you. So I'm sure even if we do see a downturn, I'm sure you'll be able to pivot because you're super creative with all of these different.
Well, and I'm still really happy in my other businesses too. So I don't ever see myself, at least anytime soon, giving that up, but maybe not having to rely on that so heavily. Again, just having the flexibility, especially as an artist, I want to be able to paint when I want to paint, not because I have to be selling or making that income. So.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're going to transition into the last questions of the podcast. These are questions that I ask every single person that comes on, just to get to know you and get to know where your head's at and how you can help other people. First question: everyone has their own definition of what it means to have financial peace. What is your definition?
See, I skipped over this one because I wasn't sure. So let me think about it. Yeah, I mean, I think having the flexibility to spend your time how you want to spend it, knowing you've got, that money in the bank. I think anytime there's an issue, as long as you have money to be able to spend to fix that problem, it can be a lot less stressful. So having just savings, having flexibility, spending your time and your days how you want to, that's how I would define, financial peace.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I've said it 100 times. Wealth gives you options. So yes, more money, more problems, but the problems are different. Yeah. Much different. The problem isn't how am I going to feed my baby. The problem is what kind of flooring should I put in this rental? So it's different problems.
Which keeps me up at night sometimes. I totally agonized over, do we do LVP or refinish the hardwood? It was a whole thing. But yeah, then perspective is like not that big a deal. Either way would have been fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. If there are listeners out there that want to start building wealth and they have no clue where to get started, what would you tell them?
I would say start with Bigger Pockets. I think it's just such a great free resource and great community. That Real Estate Rookie Facebook group we mentioned, a great resource. You throw in any question and you're going to get great responses back. Don't ask them, if I should start an LLC, like there's some questions that you see all the time, but otherwise it's a great, great community. So Bigger Pockets, save as much money as you can, and also then buy a home as soon as you can. I think just the sooner you can be homeowners, be building that equity, building that wealth, as opposed to just those expenses going out towards rent and everything else, will just set you miles ahead. And knowing that that's how we got started and just kind of it propelled us forward, even unintentionally almost, was just a great thing to have.
So since you mentioned Bigger Pockets, do you think everyone should get into real estate, into owning real estate, not just your home, but investment properties? Yeah.
I want to say yes. Like, I mean, but I also know it's probably not the best fit, but as far as a wealth builder, it just feels very safe. It feels very secure. People are always going to need a place to live. There's great tax benefits to it. So, you may not need to be a full-time real estate investor, full-time landlord, but just having a few properties to give you those options and that wealth building to then, pivot and do what you want with it. But at least you're working towards that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also, guys, I just want to point out, I will be linking, we talked about Bigger Pockets a lot. I'll be linking that down in the show notes. And also we talked about Dave Ramsey earlier in the show. I'm also going to link that in the show notes so you guys can take a look. Both of them have amazing, endless content. And it's so funny. I'm sorry. I know I was supposed to go to the next question, but I just want to break. It's so funny that you mentioned the whole LLC thing, because I literally just answered a question like an hour ago in the group about forming LLC. I'm like, listen, you need to get assets and then protect them. Yeah. I'm not going to go on that binge, but okay. Next question. If there's one thing you could advise everyone to avoid doing to build wealth, what would it be?
Yeah, I think, again, I'm still a little terrified of credit cards. So, have credit cards, use them wisely, but be paying them off every month. Don't carry that rolling debt. It's going to set you back. Just as far as building wealth, it's going to hold you back if you do look to invest in real estate, because then your debt to income ratio is going to be low. So I would say just, yeah, avoid the kind of dumb debt, credit card debt. If you can avoid car payments, we drive used cars that we can pay for cash, just because again, it's nice to not have that loan payment and also be able to save that instead. So
Yeah, my wife, she said something to me the other day. It was crazy. She was like, babe, why do we have more properties than cars? I was like,
why not? What?
yeah, well, I was like, why not? Like, but it's not the norm. So if
Yeah.
you're doing something against the norm, then I tend to think it's a good thing. But and I do want to bring that's a great point about credit cards, because you guys got to remember credit cards are anywhere from 18% up to like what 30%, 35%, something crazy. And so if you go on, I think it's episode 2 of the podcast, I talk about the power of compound interest. And I mainly talk about investing and growing your money. I didn't really hit on compound interest that works against you. So when you have that credit card that has $10,000 at, let's say 23%, if you go in and compound that, let's just say you take 5 years to pay it off, it's scary. It's scary how much money you're paying, because it's
feels
quadrupling every 3 years, or it's doubling every 3 years.
and that just feels so insurmountable. Like, I don't know how you would ever get out like that. Yeah, just if you can avoid that to begin with, you're going to be in such a better position. Yeah.
I 100% agree. Last question. If you could ask anyone, dead or alive, one question, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Okay, so this one I'm chuckling because I feel like it's a little unexpected, but I'm going to go with JonBenet Ramsey. I want to know what happened to her. I'm a very big true crime fanatic. Like, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. She was murdered as a young child. It's like this big mystery as far as like in the true crime world goes. So yeah, that's my answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's out of the box. Yeah.
Sometimes I listen to a lot of bigger podcasts, but sometimes or bigger podcasts, but sometimes I need a little bit of a break. And true crime, like murder mysteries, that's my escape. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. That's great. Okay, Allie, where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so I'm very active on Instagram for my art. I'm at Allie Datillio on Instagram. I promote a lot there for my art coaching business also, which is called The Studio Source, but you can find me on Instagram at Allie Datillio. We do have an Instagram for our real estate business. It's at Forward Property LLC. I have not been super active. I think when things got crazy, it's just kind of got on the back burner. But if you find me on my main Instagram page, I'm there. I also have a website, alliedatillio.com. And yeah.
Oh, Allie Datillio. Allie Datillio. I will be linking all of those things in the show notes below, so you guys can reach out to her, look at her art, look at her real estate, and don't bombard her too much, guys. But this was awesome. I really appreciate you taking out the time, come on the podcast and share not only your journey, but also your tips for others getting started. I think a lot of the stuff that you've talked about today, it's possible for others to do. Like, you didn't win the lottery. You didn't, you're not a doctor making 6 figures. You're an artist, and your husband still works a W-2. So it's not like you guys just threw up your hands, quit your W-2, and went straight into real estate and made millions. Like, it's been a road.
Yeah, it's been a road with 3 little kids too, trying to navigate all of that.
But Allie, you can't invest if you have children.
Well, yeah. Well, you just outsource everything, and anything's possible as long as the numbers work. Yep. Say that.
Somebody else got to feed the kids. Someone else got to change diapers. Somebody.
We do have a lot of support with the kids, but in your business, it's outsource as much as you can. Yeah.
But I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time and sharing your story, because I like to say, like, everyone always sees the finished product, but nobody really sees the journey it took to get there. So I have no doubt in my mind that you're going to be doing wonderful things, not only this year, but the years to come. And hopefully I can have you back on in the next year or so, and maybe you're even closer to that.
So maybe my husband will be here with me talking about his
management
company, whatever's going on. But yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
absolutely. I appreciate you coming on, guys. This was Allie Datillio, and we are out of here. See you later, Allie.
Yeah, thanks.
So, guys, that was our interview with Miss Allie Datillio. I mean, she talked about so many different things. She talked about how to do a 203K loan. She talked about using a home equity line of credit. She talked about living in a property and improving it as she goes. She talked about something called a BRRRR, where you're buying undervalued properties, fixing them up, and then refinancing to get your money out. And as you heard, like she's had some really, really unusual deals. For example, one property that has a single family home, 3 apartments, and 3 garages. Like that's not something you see every day. She discussed how, you know, sometimes appraisers mess up. Guys, they are human. You have to work with them. You have to provide the data. You have to be willing to put in a little bit of extra effort, because some things are harder than others. I'm sure that that appraiser had a really hard time trying to find comps for such an unusual property. So, he appraised it. He thought that the purchase price was what the actual value is, and sometimes that's how it happens. So, but you heard how she didn't give up when appraisal came in too low. She ended up contesting it, and not only did she contest it by saying, look, I think my property is worth more, she actually went on the MLS. She found homes that are similar that actually sold for a specific amount, and she gave that information to the appraiser. So that's a great example of you're using data and your due diligence to all the information that you gathered before doing the deal in order to make sure that it went well. So I also loved how she built a relationship with this seller, because you guys have to understand, money isn't everyone's motivation. You know, just because a property can be producing a whole lot of income, but a lot of times people don't want to have to deal with the headaches that come with that income. And when someone's ready to retire, they don't want to have to manage tenants anymore, and they don't want to have to keep renovating properties and stuff like that. So sometimes they want to sell. But as Allie talked about, she was super duper patient. The seller was super duper transparent, saying, look, I need to talk to my tax advisor. I need to talk to my financial planner, and doing all these things because that's what they need to do. And she was patient, and that built the trust. People don't always buy the best deals. They buy from the best people. They buy from the people that they trust, that they feel comfortable with, that they can be vulnerable with. So if you're ever trying to buy a property from someone, you have to understand the predicament they're in, and you have to be understanding and solve their problem. Don't always look at the numbers like it's this number and that's how it's going to be, and that's it. But with that being said, guys, I'm going to get up out of here. I'm going to be linking to all of Allie's contact information she provided download in the show notes. I'm also going to be linking to Bigger Pockets that we talked about a lot, the rookie real estate group, which is how we met. I'm going to be linking to Dave Ramsey again, of course. But if you guys don't mind, just make sure you guys go and follow the page on Instagram. I'm always putting out a bunch of clips and financial information and financial tips and things like that on Twitter and on Instagram, which you can also find in the show notes below. You guys can always join our Discord, where we talk about different things like real estate, stock market investing, how to, find private money lenders, all the differences between all these lending strategies. But if you guys want to join that, you're more than willing to. It's down below. And also, I do offer, I just started offering financial one-on-one coaching. So if that's something that you guys want to sit down with me over Zoom, and you want to create a financial plan tailored to you to accomplish the goals you want to, then you can go down below, schedule a meeting with me, and we can get it done. So make sure you guys, if that's something you're interested in, check it out. If not, it's no big deal. I put out this podcast. It's free because I want the information to be out there. But I understand this information is not tailored for everyone. Everyone's not going to be able to replicate the things Allie has, but also you guys are going to be able to do things that maybe Allie cannot. But with that being said, guys, I'm your host, James Bowman, and always remember, you're only as secure as your ability to perform. So spend your life accumulating assets that can perform for you. Later, guys.